You carry an invisible leash, and you have handed its end to people who do not respect you. You rehearse messages. You soften opinions in rooms you intellectually outclass. You wait for a text, like a verdict from a court you never agreed to enter. You replay a conversation from 3 days ago because someone's tone shifted by a degree only you noticed. You smile when tired. You agree when you disagree. You shrink when you should expand. The most humiliating part is not what they do to you. It's that you let them, every day, in exchange for a currency they will never pay. You were told being good meant being agreeable. Maturity meant making others comfortable. Intelligence meant endless restraint for people who never extended that same intelligence back. This is the foundational lie of your emotional life. Not a misunderstanding, a program, a system that needs you cooperative, predictable, and quietly bleeding power into rooms that feed on it. The question you were taught never to ask is the only one that matters now. Why does someone more thoughtful, more capable, and more self-aware than everyone around them feel entirely at the mercy of how those people treat them? You did not stumble here. The algorithm did not deliver this by accident. You arrived because the weight of that leash finally grew heavier than the fear of cutting it. You stand at a fork most never see. You can close this and return to the quiet humiliation of waiting for approval that never arrives in the dose you need. Or you can stay and learn the architecture of needing absolutely nothing. The exact psychology Machiavelli and Jung mapped centuries ago, which the modern world has deliberately buried. Read that again. Inside that single sentence lies the diagnosis of your suffering. Every time you adjust to be received well, you hand another person the keys to your internal state. You are not building relationships. You are paying rent on a kingdom you already own. And the rent never ends because approval expires the moment you wake. The economics of attention are colder than you were taught. Validation is a market, and the moment you reveal you need it, your value collapses. Machiavelli knew it. Jung knew it. The system that raised you knew it perfectly, which is why it never told you. A population that needs nothing cannot be governed by promises of approval. A population that needs everything will perform anything for the next dose. You were trained to monitor how you are received when the entire purpose of self-mastery is to monitor what you actually want. The leash is not rope. It is attention, yours, given freely to people who never earned it. By the end, you will understand exactly how to take it back, exactly what shifts inside you when you do, and exactly how others respond once they sense the leash is no longer in their hand. Stay with me. There is a specific psychological mechanism, the one Jung called the most dangerous part of becoming an individual, that nobody warned you about. I will not give it to you yet. You must see the trap clearly first, or the key will mean nothing. If these ideas resonate, hit subscribe for more top-tier content. Drop Sovereign in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Picture a man on a chessboard. He believes he's a player. He studies the pieces. He plans his moves. He prides himself on his intelligence, his patience, his ability to anticipate. But there is something he does not know. He is not a player. He is a piece. And the hand that moves him belongs to anyone in his life whose opinion he has not yet learned to ignore. This is the position you occupy right now, and the most painful part is that you are intelligent enough to almost see it, but conditioned enough to keep flinching away from the full picture. Machiavelli observed something brutal about human nature that polite society refuses to repeat. He noticed that the man who needs to be loved cannot rule himself, let alone influence others. Every desire for approval is a lever, and the moment another person finds that lever, they own a piece of you that you will spend years trying to buy back. The terrible irony of being a perceptive person is that your perceptiveness is precisely what makes you vulnerable. You notice the micro-expressions. You catch the tonal shift. You feel the temperature of a room change. And because you feel it, you respond to it. You adjust, you compensate, you repair. And every adjustment is a small surrender, a quiet confession that their internal state has more authority over your behavior than your own does. Here is the precise moment I am describing. You are mid-sentence in a meeting or mid-text in a conversation, and you sense a flicker of disapproval, a pause that lasted half a second too long, a reply that came back shorter than the one before it. And in that exact micro-instant, something inside you contracts. You do not call it fear because you are too self-aware to use that word. You call it being considerate. You call it reading the room. You call it emotional intelligence. But strip away the language, and what is happening is this. A stranger's mood has just rewritten your behavior in real time, and you have allowed it because you were never taught that you were permitted to refuse. That is the leash. It is not in their hand. It is in your nervous system. Carl Jung had a name for the part of you that does this. He called it the persona, the social mask you constructed in childhood to be accepted by the people whose approval you literally needed to survive. As a child, you did need that approval. Your survival depended on it, but the persona did not get the memo when you grew up. It is still operating on a child's logic, still convinced that disapproval equals exile, exile equals death. So every time an adult in your life withholds warmth, your nervous system reacts as if you are about to be cast out of the tribe and left to die in the cold. This is not weakness. This is biology running an outdated program on hardware that has long since outgrown it. And the only way out is not to argue with the program. It is to install a new one entirely. But here is what most teachers of stoicism and self-mastery will never tell you, because the truth is too uncomfortable to package neatly. The reason you have not been able to cut this leash, despite reading the books, despite understanding the concepts, despite knowing intellectually that other people's opinions do not define you, the reason none of it has worked, is that you have been trying to think your way out of a problem that lives below thought. And there is something specific that has to happen first. Something Jung described, and almost no one in the modern self-improvement industry has the stomach to actually teach. We are coming to it. But first, you have to see what the leash has cost you, because until the cost is visible, the cut will not be made. Look closely at the part of you that wants to be liked, not from a place of judgment, from a place of forensic curiosity, because that part of you is not your friend. It presents itself as your kindness, your decency, your good nature. But underneath the costume is something far less flattering. And seeing it clearly is the first irreversible step towards sovereignty. The Jungian shadow is the collection of traits, impulses and motivations that you have refused to acknowledge in yourself because they do not match the image you want to project. Most people imagine the shadow as containing dark, dangerous things, rage, lust, cruelty. Sometimes it does. But for the highly self-aware, intelligent, conscientious person that's for you, the shadow contains something far more disorienting. Your shadow contains your hunger for recognition, your hunger for status, your hunger to be seen as special, your hunger to be chosen. And because you have spent your entire life performing humility, performing modesty, performing the role of the good and gracious person who does not need such things, you have buried this hunger so deep that it now operates entirely outside your awareness, which means it controls you completely. This is the uncomfortable truth. The reason you bend toward approval is not because you are kind. It is because you are hungry and you have been forbidden from admitting it. The good person mask was supposed to make you above the desire for validation. Instead, it just made the desire invisible to you while leaving it fully operational. You did not eliminate the hunger. You just lost the ability to see it, which means you lost the ability to govern it. And anything you cannot see governs you. Notice what happens when someone praises your work. Notice the small, almost imperceptible spike of warmth in your chest. Notice how quickly your mind moves to dismiss it. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just doing my job. And notice, underneath that dismissal, the part of you that wanted more. Wanted the praise to land harder. Wanted it to be witnessed by others. Wanted it to be remembered. That is your shadow speaking, and you have been pretending not to hear it for so long that it has learned to speak through your behavior instead. It writes the email you didn't need to send. It posts the thing you didn't need to post. It accepts the favor you didn't want to do. It is running your life from a basement you refuse to enter. Here is the perspective reversal that changes everything. You have been told that the path to freedom from approval seeking is to want it less, to rise above it, to become so enlightened that the desire dissolves. This is the most damaging piece of advice in the entire psychological landscape, and it is exactly backwards. The desire does not dissolve through suppression, it dissolves through recognition. Jung's principle of individuation is brutal in its simplicity. What you refuse to face, you become. What you face fully, you integrate. And what you integrate, you transcend. The path is not to deny the hunger. The path is to walk down into the basement, turn on the light, look the hungry creature in the eye and say, I see you, you are mine. And from this moment forward, you do not get to drive. This is what almost no one will tell you. Because admitting that you have spent years performing a virtue you do not actually possess is the kind of recognition most people would do anything to avoid. But you are not most people. The fact that you are still here, still reading, still letting these sentences cut closer than is comfortable, is itself evidence of something. The ones who could not bear this are already gone. They clicked away 3 minutes ago, somewhere around the word hunger. You did not. Hold on to what that says about you, because we are about to enter territory that requires it. And the question that should be burning in you right now is this. If the persona is the cage and the shadow is the key, what exactly does it look like to integrate it? What is the mechanism? Because understanding the diagnosis without the procedure is its own form of cruelty, and I have no intention of leaving you there. There is a state of being that most people will never access, and the few who do never describe it accurately, because describing it diminishes it. The Stoics circled around it. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it in private. Machiavelli observed it in the rare men who could not be moved by flattery or threat. Carl Jung mapped the psychological architecture of it without naming it directly. I am going to name it for you now. The state is called sovereignty, and it is not a feeling, it is a structure. A sovereign mind is not a mind that has stopped feeling the pull of approval. That mind does not exist outside of fiction. A sovereign mind is a mind that has built a fortress between the pull and the response. The pull comes, the small spike when someone likes your post, the small contraction when someone ignores your message. But it arrives at a wall. It does not reach the throne room. It does not write your next sentence. It does not choose your next move. The feeling is permitted to exist. The feeling is simply no longer in command. This is what emotional detachment actually is. And it is the precise opposite of what most people imagine. It is not coldness. It is not numbness. It is not the absence of caring. It is the presence of an internal authority so settled that no external input can override it. The mechanism by which this fortress is constructed is something Jung called individuation, and Machiavelli described in his own ruthless language as becoming one's own prince. The process is not mystical, it has stages. The first stage is the one we just walked through, seeing the hunger and refusing to keep pretending it isn't there. The second stage is the one we are entering now, building an internal metric of worth that does not require external confirmation to function. Here is what that actually means in your daily life. Right now, when you do good work, the work does not feel real to you until someone acknowledges it. Right now, when you have an insight, the insight does not feel valid until someone agrees. Right now, when you make a decision, the decision does not feel stable until someone affirms it. This is the architecture of a mind that has outsourced its own measurement. It is a kingdom that prints no currency of its own and must therefore beg for the currency of every passing traveler. The sovereign mind prints its own. It looks at the work and knows whether it was good. It looks at the insight and knows whether it was true. It looks at the decision and knows whether it was right. The acknowledgement of others becomes pleasant when it arrives and irrelevant when it does not. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the loud cousin of insecurity. Sovereignty is silent because it has nothing to prove. And now imagine yourself 6 months from this moment walking into the rooms you currently flinch in. The meeting where your idea was dismissed. The dinner with the family member whose opinion you have been organizing your life around. The conversation with the person whose silence used to ruin your week. You walk in and something is different, and at first you cannot name what it is. Your shoulders do not hunch, your sentences do not soften, you do not check their face for permission before you finish a thought. You speak, you listen, you decide. And when the moment comes that previously would have crushed you, the dismissive comment, the cold response, the withheld warmth, it arrives at the wall, and the wall holds. You feel it touch you, and then you feel it pass. And you continue exactly as you were, because the throne room was not breached, because the throne room is no longer accessible to them. That is what is waiting for you. Not numbness, not isolation, not the cold stoicism of caricature, a self that finally belongs to itself. But there is a second perspective reversal that has to happen before you can hold this state stably, and it is the one that most stoic philosophy and modern self-mastery content will never give you, because it cuts against the entire surface message of the genre. You're about to learn that detachment is not the goal. Detachment is a side effect. The goal is something else entirely, and once you see it, everything you thought you knew about needing nothing will reorganize itself. Here is what the modern teachers of detachment get wrong. They tell you to stop caring what others think, as if caring were the problem, as if the solution were a kind of voluntary blindness to other people. This is not sovereignty, this is just dissociation wearing a philosopher's coat. And it does not work, because it is fighting against your own nature. You are a social being. You will always register the responses of the people around you. The question was never whether you would feel the pull. The question was whether the pull would dictate your behavior. The real shift is not from caring to not caring. The real shift is from needing to noticing. You stop needing the approval and you begin simply noticing the data. Someone's reaction to you becomes information, not a verdict. Their warmth becomes pleasant, not necessary. Their coldness becomes interesting, not catastrophic. The world stops being a courtroom in which you are perpetually on trial and becomes a field of observation in which you are the one taking notes. This is the inversion Machiavelli mapped without ever using these exact words. He understood that the man who can observe without reacting holds a kind of authority that no amount of charisma or status can manufacture, because he has become unmovable. And the unmovable thing in any room is the thing the room organizes itself around. And this is where the paradox emerges that almost no one is prepared for. The moment you genuinely stop needing approval, the people who previously withheld it from you begin extending it, not because they have changed, because the dynamic has flipped. They were withholding it because, on some level they could not articulate, they sensed you needed it, and the unconscious mind of every human being recoils from neediness even while exploiting it. The boss who never recognized you, the romantic interest who kept you at a distance, the peer group that never let you fully in, they were not punishing you for a flaw. They were responding to a signal, the signal of hunger. And when the signal goes silent, when the leash falls from your end and lies on the ground between you, the entire field of force in the relationship reverses. Suddenly they are the ones leaning in. Suddenly your attention becomes the scarce resource. Suddenly the approval you stopped chasing arrives uninvited. And the strangest part is that by the time it arrives, you no longer want it the way you used to. You can receive it without being moved by it, which is exactly why they keep offering it. The human psyche worships what it cannot purchase. This is power dynamics at the level Machiavelli actually wrote about, beneath the surface manuals about manipulation and influence. The power was never in what you said or did. The power was always in what you needed. The one who needs less in any exchange holds the position. Always. This is the Machiavellian mindset, the stoic mindset, the sigma mindset. Call it whatever you want. The underlying psychology is the same. It is the psychology of a person who has reclaimed sovereignty over their own internal weather, and therefore can no longer be conscripted by anyone else's storms. But notice, and this is critical, because misunderstanding this point will undo everything we have built. Notice that the goal is not to make them want you. The goal is for their wanting to no longer matter. If you do this work in order to flip the power dynamic, you have not done the work. You have just disguised the leash as a strategy. The integration only holds when the outcome stops mattering. The inversion is real only when you have stopped measuring it. This is the recursive trap that most people fall into when they encounter this material. They try to use the philosophy of needing nothing as a tool to get something. And the moment they do, the philosophy collapses, because the foundation was hunger all along. The way out of this trap is the same way out as everything else we have discussed. You return to the shadow. You ask, honestly, what am I still hoping this will get me? You name it. You face it. And then you decide whether you are willing to do the work, even if you never receive any of those outcomes. If the answer is yes, you are free. If the answer is no, you are still on the leash, just holding a longer one. Most people will not be willing. You, having come this far, might be. There is a moment in this process that no one prepares you for, and I want to prepare you for it now, because it will arrive. And when it arrives, you will either understand what is happening, or you will mistake it for failure and turn back. The moment is this. Sometime after you begin practicing real detachment, real, not performed, you will encounter a profound loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, a different one. The loneliness of realizing that many of your relationships were structured around your hunger, and that without the hunger, you do not know how to be in them anymore. People you used to overgive to will sense the shift and pull away, because the dynamic that fed them no longer exists. Conversations that used to take an hour will end in 15 minutes, because you are no longer doing the emotional labor of holding both ends of them. Invitations will decrease because you are no longer auditioning for the room. And in that quiet before the new architecture of your life arrives, you will feel something that looks like loss and is actually liberation in disguise. This is the threshold most people will not cross. They feel the loneliness, mistake it for a mistake, and reattach to the leash because the leash, however painful, was at least familiar. Familiar pain is more comfortable than unfamiliar freedom. This is the most common reason people abandon individuation halfway through, and it is the reason Jung warned that the path of becoming a true individual is not for those who require the warmth of constant company. The fortress is yours, but it is built in territory that few people will follow you into. That is the cost, that is the price of the crown. And no one, in the end, can decide for you whether the price is worth paying. But here is what you should know before you decide. The people who arrive in your life on the other side of that threshold are different. They are not drawn to your hunger because you do not have any. They are drawn to your stillness. They are sovereigns themselves, or sovereigns in formation, and the relationships you build with them are not transactional. They are not negotiations. They are not silent contracts about who owes whom what flavor of validation. They are something closer to what the ancients meant when they spoke of friendship between free citizens, meetings of authority, not exchanges of need. You will lose some people, you will find others. The math in the long run is in your favor. And now, sit with this image because this is the destination. It is a Tuesday morning, ordinary in every way. You wake up. You check no messages for reassurance. You scroll no feeds for confirmation that you exist. You make your coffee. You begin your work. You make a decision that previously would have required 3 conversations to feel solid, and you make it in silence. Someone you used to over-explain yourself to sends a curt message, and you read it, and you feel a small flicker, and the flicker passes, and you respond from a place that does not need anything from them. The day continues, the week continues, the year continues, and somewhere in the middle of it you realize you have not thought about how others perceive you in days. The leash is not just dropped. The leash has rotted away because it was made of attention, and you stopped feeding it. You look up and the kingdom is yours. It always was. You just finally stopped paying rent on it. Remember the image I gave you at the beginning? The man on the chessboard who thought he was a player. The whole point of that image was never to show you that you were a piece. The point was to show you that the board itself was optional. The sovereign does not play the game better. The sovereign walks away from the board and builds a different one, on different ground, with different rules, rules that begin and end with the authority of the one who built it. The whole arc you have just traveled, from the leash to the shadow to the fortress to the inversion to this threshold, was never about learning to win the approval game. It was about learning that the approval game is what the unsovereign play, while the sovereign are doing something else entirely. You did not just learn a strategy. You crossed a border. You were one kind of person when this video began, and you are quietly becoming another by the time it ends. That is the work. A sovereign mind does not negotiate its worth in the court of public opinion, because the court has no jurisdiction over a territory that has declared independence. The applause was a trap anyway. It was never going to give you what you actually needed, because what you actually needed was never something another person could provide. It was the recognition of your own authority over your own life, and that by definition only you can grant. So grant it, not as a feeling, as a structural decision. Today, the leash is not theirs to release. It was always yours to drop it, and then walk, slowly and without looking back into the rest of your life. If something inside you just shifted, if you felt the click of a piece falling into place that has been loose for years, drop the word sovereign in the comments below. Not as a performance, as a marker, so that the version of you reading this in 6 months can come back to this exact moment and remember the day the leash came off. And if you are ready to keep forging the architecture of an unshakable mind, to go deeper into the Machiavellian strategy, the Jungian shadow work, the stoic philosophy, the self-mastery, and the dark psychology of power dynamics that almost no one is willing to teach honestly, subscribe. This is the only place where the work continues at this depth, where the goal is not to make you feel better, but to make you become someone different. And whatever you do, do not stop now. The video waiting for you on the screen is the next door in this corridor, and the work we just did is the key that opens it. The sovereign mind is not built in a single session. It is built in the quiet accumulation of revelations that most people never let themselves hear. The next one is already there, waiting. I will see you in it. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.